Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 174. I'm Victoria Gallagher, the Law of Attraction hypnotist and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction: Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores today. And today I have a very special guest with me, Adele Spraggon. Adele Spraggon is an award-winning author, a thought leader, and an international speaker and trainer. She has been awarded the 2020 Woman of Inspiration Award, and in 2021, she was recognized as the top behavioral expert of the year. And her book, Shift 4 Steps to Personal Empowerment, has won 3 awards and is sweeping the globe, transforming how people are setting and achieving their goals. After decades of feeling stuck in patterns of procrastination, avoidance, and quitting, all of which had her living her life below her fullest potential, Adele set out on a journey of discovery and learning. Her inquiry: why the personal and professional methodologies she was following did not work for her. The result is the creation of her proprietary 4-step repatterning technique, which she delivers through a member portal called the Pattern Maker Hub. And today she supports thousands globally to achieve extraordinary levels of happiness, peace of mind, prosperity, goal achievement, and life fulfillment. And she can be found on adelespraggon.com, shift4steps.com, and patternmakerhub.com. And we'll have all of the links to all of that and her Facebook profile. All of that will be in the show notes. And so today, Adele is going to be sharing some of her insights on how to change your underlying decision-making patterns so that you can achieve any goal that you set for yourself. And so welcome to the show, Adele.
Thank you, Victoria. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Thank you so much for being on the show. I love your story, and I'd love to really dive into that a little bit more because, I think a lot of people do experience that, that moment where it's just like they feel like the, personal growth field is not working for them. And I'd love to really kind of dive in a little bit more to finding out, a little bit more about your story and how it was that you decided to start to study human behavior.
Yeah. Well, I guess my journey starts about 30 years ago, maybe 35 at this point. And I was heavily invested, Victoria, in self-help and personal development. And I was coaching it. I was doing everything that I believed I was supposed to be doing. And yet, I started and quit 3 businesses one after another. Each time I enrolled business partners, I enrolled sponsors, I had great ideas. I loved the ideas. Um, I got money for them, I got people to invest in them. And then I would hit a certain roadblock, and boom, I would turn tail and I would be out of there. And I would just leave
Mm.
behind this chaos because people are saying, what happened? Where did she go? And at first, I was quite willing to say, oh, it's my partner's fault, or it's the idea's fault, or it's the sponsor's fault. And I had all these different places that I could throw blame around, or it's my fault. I would often go there. But then finally, I woke up and I went, no. After 3 times, this is a pattern. This
Mhm.
is something that I'm doing, and I need to find the source of why I am doing what I'm doing. And so
Wow.
that had me do a deep dive into my mind to uncover it.
Wow. So what were these roadblocks that you kept hitting against? Like what was it? What would you tell yourself, or what was the thing that made you feel like you just couldn't pursue that anymore?
Yeah, it was bizarre. As I was going through it, it made no logical sense. I would just get this feeling of complete stop, like and terrible boredom towards my idea. It was just this overwhelming feeling of I don't want to go forward, and I am sick to death of whatever it is I'm doing. And since then, so now that I know how patterns work, how brain patterns work, and we
Mhm.
can get into that more, Victoria. But since then, I realized, oh, there is no logic in the patterns.
Mhm.
Of course, it wasn't logical that I was bored. I mean, it didn't make any sense. What was actually happening when I did this deep dive into my mind is I was terrified, but I didn't see it. It was this boredom that was overlaying my fear. And what if I can dive even deeper? What I realized was actually happening was I had a terrible people pleasing pattern
Mhm.
that so whenever somebody was upset, and it might even just be like a look in their eyes or in their face. I didn't even have to know why they were upset. But if I thought that I had upset somebody with my business idea, with what I was saying, that was it. This pattern would come down and it was just curtains. So
Wow.
yeah, it was really, really powerful. And so, understanding patterns, knowing why that was happening for me was the catalyst for change. It was my open door to transformation as soon as I figured it out.
That's great. That's great. So then what happened? You realize, okay, these are these are patterns. This isn't going to change. I could just start another thing and the same thing's going to ultimately happen again. So how did you eventually figure out how to correct that?
Yeah, well, I enrolled myself in university. I decided I wanted to study the human brain, how it's working. So I went, it took me 10 years to get my master's, but I thought I'm going to get to the bottom of this and figure this out. So I did that. And then the other thing I did was I really did a lot of self reflection. Thank goodness for all the history that I had had of personal development, meditation. My journey up until that point now managed to support me in understanding my own brain and using what I was learning in university to understand my brain. So here's what was going on. And then I'll say what the result was. What neuroscience has now discovered using modern brain scanners, and this is only in the last 20 years or so, is that the action that we are taking, the decision that our brain is making, does not originate in the conscious mind. And you probably know this from all your work. It originates in the deep recesses of the unconscious.
Mhm.
So if we can hook up somebody's brain up to a brain scanner, the brain scanner would be able to tell what action the person is going to take before that person knows they are going to take that action. So if, I was going to book on your podcast, my unconscious brain already knew that before I knew that.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's a fascinating way to look at the human brain and to look at how it works. So of course I wasn't making that decision to quit. My unconscious had already made that decision. My conscious mind was just following along and just going, oh yeah, that I'm going to justify why I need to quit by finding some reason in the outside world. Make sense?
Absolutely.
So once I got that, I went, okay, yeah, now I know what I need to do. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I had to work on the patterning of my brain rather than working on my actions, my behaviors, my beliefs. All of that was at the surface. And so that's where I started. Now my meditation came in to help me and support me in understanding that. And I did a very powerful journal technique to understand that. And that's how I created this 4-step repatterning technique, which transforms people's behavior massively, like and rapidly, but at a very, very deep level. So once I had these 4 steps, then I was able to move forward much more powerfully, much more powerfully. And that's the next business that I started. I started teaching that tool. So, and since then, massive amounts of people around the globe are using it to repattern their beliefs, their behaviors, their actions, and stop making those same mistakes over and over and over again.
Isn't that interesting? Because it seems like you had to go through that experience yourself, because that was sort of your life path. That was sort of your journey to experience that so that you could go back and learn what you needed to learn so that you could teach this to other people.
Absolutely. I always say that everything that we have done in our past, Victoria, is just fodder. It's grist for the mill. It's stuff that we can use. Because here's the other thing that your listener will be interested to know about their brain. Everything that they have ever touched, smelled, tasted, seen, read, experienced is stored in the unconscious regions of their brain. So just imagine how much that is. I mean, that's a massive amount of data that the brain has to pull from. So once we get rid of a pattern that is just simply a neural pathway in the brain, okay, that's my definition of pattern. Once we can tease apart that pattern, then the brain goes to the subconscious regions, into that vast warehouse of stored information within, to upgrade and to create a pattern that is optimal for this situation. And that's why people just take brand new actions, brand new behaviors, brand new beliefs, because they actually have it all inside them. Like everything that all the personal development coaches have been saying forever, right? Like you have the answer. You just got to tap in. But the problem is that the brain pattern is interfering with finding that correct solution for you.
Yes. It's a guest that I interviewed on my last show was literally talking about these brain patterns, and he was just it was really interesting, just the way that he walked me through this situation where this pattern where we understand, like, there's 12 months out of the year. You could say what's the sixth month, what's the first month, because we understand that pattern. But if we try to rearrange that and stay it in alphabetical order, it gets much more difficult. And that's because of those patterns of our wiring in our brain. We know things in patterns, but not necessarily, it's not necessarily on, we don't know them the way as well as we actually think we do. We just know it
Right.
because it's a pattern. The
Exactly.
same way we know the alphabet, or we know to count, 1 through 100 and all that, because it's all a pattern.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But it goes even deeper than that. And what neuroscience is now determined is that everything that we do is driven by a pattern. So, I sometimes help people to understand their problem solving pattern, and I give them
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of dots on a page, which is
Mm-hmm.
actually a picture, but you can't see it initially. So it's just all these dots, right? And then I say, okay, what is it? And how they react to that is actually the activity, but they don't know it, right? They think that they're uncovering this picture. And then
Interesting. It's
yeah,
tricky.
and then I'll say, okay, now what you just used was your problem solving pattern. So let's
Mhm.
identify what that is, right?
Mhm.
So when
Mhm.
they're faced with a problem that they can't solve, different people will react different ways. Why is that? Because you have a pattern in your brain for problem solving. And the question is, does that work for you or not? So some people are really curious and eager, and they're like, oh, don't tell me the answer. I just want to keep figuring this out, right? And they have a
Mhm.
pattern. That's their problem solving pattern. And others are just like, I can't do these things. Like, just tell me. And they'll drift off or wait, right? And you'll watch them do this. And it's like, wow, that's really interesting how different people react. And that's all the result of patterns.
I could relate when you said the type of problem solving pattern I probably fall into myself is like, don't give me the answer, let me figure it out. I have always been, and I rarely give up or reach out for help or anything like that. So that's interesting that you mentioned that pattern.
That's right. Now, think about this, Victoria, because this is really, really interesting to consider.
Okay.
Who you are today, everything that you do, every behavior you adopt, every belief you hold is the result of patterns that have brought you here. So the
Wow.
very fact that you are an entrepreneur doing a podcast, right? Writing a book, right? The very fact that that is you is all because of past created patterns.
Wow.
So the only question that we ask ourselves is not, is what I'm doing right or correct? That is a very limited question. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing you need to ask yourself is the pattern that I'm using working to take me in the direction of my goals?
Interesting.
That's a really different way of seeing it.
Yeah. Now, what
Because
if it's working to create some success, but not all the success?
then I say it doesn't work.
Okay.
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 So here's what I mean by working. It has to work for everybody, not
Mm-hmm.
just you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it has to be an experience in which you're not suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do I need to explain that? So if there's, some people say, well, I'm getting to my goals, but I'm pushing past my fears, I'm getting past my comfort zone. That's suffering. So
Oh,
that's a sign of an unworkable pattern. It just means that
okay.
you don't have the correct pattern yet in your pattern box to take that action without
Mm-hmm.
suffering. So that's also doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things also, if you get to the goal and you go, oh, this isn't what I expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we all do that. Then the pattern that brought you there is considered an unworkable pattern. And the beautiful thing about working with brain patterns is we don't need the solution. As soon as we
Mm-hmm.
know, oh, we don't have a pattern that works, all we have to do is tease it apart. We're just going to remove that pattern inside the brain, and the brain will create a new pattern that beautifully aligns with the situation you're in.
Wow,
So,
that sounds amazing. I love that. I
yeah,
love that. So, how do you go about assessing what the pattern is that you have right now and what would be a more workable pattern?
great. So you've asked two questions. So I'm going to answer them separate from each other. How do
Okay.
you know when a pattern doesn't work? Two ways. One way is there is conflict either internally or externally.
Mhm.
So that means that there is something wrong. Either you feel that there's something wrong or what you're doing is upsetting somebody else.
Mm.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
one way. The second way is you're just not moving in the direction of your dreams.
Mhm.
Both of those are indications that you have an unworkable pattern. So
Mhm.
I have an activity that people can do where they actually look at what are the actions that I'm taking or not taking? What behaviors am I adopting or not be adopting? What beliefs do I have? Um, and then the second part of your question was, how do you upgrade that? Well,
Mhm.
the beautiful thing about our brain is we don't have to know what the right pattern is going to be.
Mm.
Because
Okay.
here's the thing about, now I'm going to dive. Do you want me to dive a little bit more into how your brain is working? Is that
I would
helpful?
love
Okay.
that. Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Here's something truly interesting that is a really recent finding in neuroscience. Most people know that the brain is divided into two hemispheres. There's a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, right? And you've likely heard something like the left hemisphere is responsible for logic and mathematics, and the right hemisphere is responsible for emotions and artistic and imagination.
I was literally just having this conversation with my husband yesterday about the two sides of the brain and how you need both. And
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. But here's the latest findings out of neuroscience. Both sides of your brain are equally working when it comes to logical things and when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to creativity and imagination. You
Mm.
need both hemispheres.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question becomes, okay, if it's not functional, if the brain isn't divided by function, then why is it divided? And here's what is happening. Here is how your brain is working. Your left hemisphere's design is to narrowly focus in on what it already knows. Think patterns here. Okay.
Okay. All right.
My desire to quit was a left brain patterning. My left hemisphere knew that the answer to my problem, even though it was creating a problem, was quitting. Okay, so that's a left brain patterning. The
Mm-hmm.
right hemisphere's design is different. Its design is to drink in everything that is going on now, in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
But the right hemisphere doesn't discriminate between
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't know anything, K-N-O-W. It's unable to know because its job is just to absorb everything. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is always occurring. And then the right hemisphere passes its information over to the left hemisphere, who is supposed to translate it and tell you what is going on in your situation. And then the left hemisphere is supposed to pass that information back to the right. That's where
Okay.
things have gone wonky. Okay. So
Okay.
the right hemisphere is still letting you know everything that is going on in your current situation. It's just absorbing everything. It is
So just to
passing that
really
on.
quickly summarize, just to make sure I
Yeah.
got it. So the right is absorbing it, taking it and passes it to the left side. The left side does some processing with it and passes it back to the right side so that we can kind of almost like we can understand something
Yeah.
or
So the left
work with it.
hemisphere has the language box. It contains the thought box is
Mm-hmm.
contained there, right? Not that thinking isn't occurring on both sides of your brain, it's definitely needed. But the left hemisphere is the one that speaks English or the other language that somebody may speak. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where all those thoughts are coming from. But
Mm-hmm.
it's the left hemisphere's role to interpret.
Mm-hmm.
So the left
Okay.
hemisphere will be able to say, you and I are on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The
Right.
right hemisphere is just absorbing your face and your background, and the camera and all of that is just being absorbed into my right hemisphere, and it's not discriminating between what's you, what's me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, and
What
it's
is,
using all those patterns to interpret it
yes,
because it
you
makes
got it.
meaning out of those patterns.
You got it. You got it.
Okay.
Which is
Okay.
why you and I can be in the same room and be having a totally different experience,
Mm-hmm.
because your interpretation is different, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
why somebody can say, oh, they're just like my mother.
Mm-hmm. And
That
those
person,
patterns are like another word might be filters, like we might call them our
yeah,
filters. Okay. All
yeah,
right.
that's a good way to look at it. It's filtering out all the unnecessary information and providing you information based on what came before in your past,
Okay. All right.
right?
All right. I
Okay.
love it. I love it. I interrupt just sometimes just so I can make sure I've got it and I
No,
can.
please do. Please be free to interrupt me anytime. All right. So here we have these two sides of the brain. Now, what's going on today? Why is the brain such a sorry, the brain? Why is the world such a mess? Why are we all in so much conflict, right? Why
Mm-hmm.
are we all fighting? Because what is happening is the left hemisphere has become the dominant hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
and it's no longer communicating back to the right hemisphere to
Mm-hmm.
put what it knows into context. So the right hemisphere brings context to the situation. The
Mm-hmm.
left hemisphere always interprets based on our past.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have, you're into this law of attraction, right? That is the
Right.
right hemisphere just drinking everything in,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the situation perfectly, like it understands brilliantly what is actually going on. The left hemisphere is interpreting, and then it's supposed to pass it back so that the right hemisphere can use that information.
Mm-hmm.
It's not passing it back.
Okay, now why has it stopped passing the
Passing it back.
information back?
Great question. Two reasons. One reason is evolutionary. Over the course of evolution, the corpus callosum, which is the band of fibers between the two
Uh-huh.
hemispheres, it has been thickening. So that's one reason. The other reason, though, is within our control. We have overeducated the left hemisphere,
Oh yeah.
completely overeducated it,
Like
right?
information overload.
And from everything about we do at school is more to do with left hemisphere than right hemisphere, right? So we've completely told the left hemisphere, in effect, our collective left hemisphere, we have told it, you are more powerful than your right counterpart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this has cut us off from now, from the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
because the left hemisphere is all about the past.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's all about, you think about it. My left hemisphere is all about my past. Your left hemisphere is all about your past. You're starting to see why we're in this world of me and mine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
In my left hemisphere, all it knows
We're
is
stuck
me.
in our left brains, basically.
We're stuck. Yeah. We need to get back to our right brain so that we can get context back into our situation, so that the
Mhm.
relationship between things becomes visible to us. Right
And you're
now,
saying this is a literal, like a physical change that's happened in everyone's brains, like that this has just been a problem that's been evolving for
for
like how.
centuries, centuries. Think
Okay.
millennial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So there have been pockets of history where we balanced the left and the right hemisphere, but they're just pockets. They're just
Mm-hmm.
little eras, like the Renaissance was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So but now we are even more imbalanced. It's even more left over right.
And why? Okay, so it did it happen because of the information overload? Because we just started getting way more information than we could really process?
Partly. So part of the reason is the more we educate the left brain, the
Mm-hmm.
more the left brain shapes the world around us with what it prioritizes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Okay.
if you think about, there's two sides to the coin. One side is the overeducation, but then once we overeducated, once we created left brain dominance is now creating the world.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the other thing to know about the left brain, okay? The left
Okay.
brain turns everything into a resource, including you and me.
Mm-hmm.
People today, they say, I feel like I'm running on a hamster wheel. I am constantly just chasing something and I'm not sure what I'm striving for. I don't know what it is that I want, right? I want money, or I don't have enough time, and they're just constantly running. That's because the left brain has turned themselves into a resource. Have I
Uh,
just lost you? It's really interesting how it does it.
say it in a try to explain it again.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I know it gets really tricky, right? Okay. If we think about a tree,
Mm-hmm.
our right brain will see a tree. It'll see
Mm-hmm.
nature. Okay. Our left brain sees a resource. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that I can cut down and make into logs or
Okay.
build my house with.
Right.
Okay.
Especially the people on the show Alone we watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. The right hemisphere will look at you and it will see you in your entirety. So
Mhm.
Victoria inside Victoria in the right hemisphere is this wonderful myriad of expression, which is always changing. And she's got all of these different skills that she can bring to each of her situations. But to the left hemisphere, you're a resource that makes money.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay. And because we've created left brain dominance, we've all become resources.
So my left brain is just using me for my ability to make money.
To simplify it, we can say that, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all just using, so basically we're all just kind of we're just using all of our resources
Yeah.
ultimately, because if we're in our left brain all the time, we're just left brain dominant. Um, I'm using you, you're using me, I'm using me.
If
We're
all
just
we had was
only.
our right hemisphere. I mean, thank
Mhm.
goodness that there is still some communication, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and that's when those friendships, that reciprocity, that like let's get together and I really like you and let's get to know
Mhm.
each other, that's right hemisphere. But
Mhm.
when it's all transactional, when it's all about what are you going to do for me,
Mhm.
then we're dominant left brain.
Got it.
Yeah.
Are there people that have broken free of that pattern of being left brain dominant?
Definitely. I mean, the tool I teach is about rebuilding the communication. That's what the four-step repatterning technique ultimately does. And the result of that is it's not just goal setting. Here's the most beautiful thing. All of that stress and striving, unhappiness, fear, anxiety, that's because our left brain is trying to go it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say happiness is a human being's birthright.
Mm-hmm.
At the core, when our hemispheres are working as designed, when the communication is occurring, flowing freely, joy is the experience of life. Peace and joy. And people who start to rebuild that communication, that's what starts to show up. It's like this deep connection to the present moment, deep connection to each other, to other people. All the conflicts in their lives melt away. I mean, I work with couples. They go from being on the verge of divorce to being like newlyweds again within 6 weeks.
Oh,
Oh, it's
oh,
just
that's
remarkable.
wonderful. How long does
People,
your work take? Like, can you kind of like when a person works with you, do you have a structure that everyone goes through, or is it
yes.
personalized for everyone, or?
Well, everybody needs the tool in their pocket. So everybody needs to know how to rebuild a communication. And that's the 4-step repatterning technique. So
Mm-hmm.
we start with, but everybody is working on their own individual problems, their own individual issues.
Mm-hmm.
So they start there. So if they've got conflicts in the relationship, that's where they start. So I started with my quitting pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else would start with whatever they're up against, whatever their
Right.
problem is. But would they all get the tool in order to repattern that?
Mm.
And then learning that tool and learning to apply that tool to get results takes 6 to 8 weeks. So I
Mm.
always
Okay.
guarantee that that first area of concern, that initial thing that brings a problem, will be completely disappeared within 6 to 8 weeks. Okay.
And anything is possible with this repatterning
Pretty much
tool?
anything. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like
S
I mental illnesses are different because they're a chemical imbalance
Yeah.
typically. But if it's anything that is um, society, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I'm blanking on the word. Experiential. If it's anything
Uh-huh.
experiential, it can be repatterned.
Mhm. So just for the benefit of, the audience that like, just to kind of give us a little taste of what a person can do. Like, what would you, if somebody's blocked about achieving a goal right now, like what would be the best advice that you could give somebody who really wants to achieve that goal? Like what would be the best thing that they could do?
Yeah, great question. So let's do something in action.
Okay.
Uh, Write a book. What do your listener typically, what do they want to do? What is the thing
I
they
would
want to do?
say probably my listeners are entrepreneurial, so they probably want to make more money in
Okay.
their business, get
Yeah,
more
brilliant.
clients. Let's just say they want to get more clients. For me, I personally I just want more HypnoCloud Pro subscribers.
Great. Okay, let's use that one. That one's
Okay.
brilliant. All
Yeah.
right. So you want more subscribers, more members, bigger community, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So most people now, the next step they say, the next thing they ask themselves is, how do I get there? Right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
wrong question. Yeah.
Oh, yes,
The
yes,
next
yes.
question
Okay.
is, why am I not there today?
Okay.
Okay.
And do
So
I do I answer that out loud
would you
or
like to? You're welcome to. It
let's
might be
see.
helpful if you.
Um, well, um, you know what? Is I don't know why and a good answer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't know why. Perfect. Okay. Now, notice how that question now sends you scrambling to find out what the solution is. Can you feel that
Yes.
inside yourself?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe I need a coach. Maybe I need this. Maybe I need that. Okay, this gets
Right.
very expensive.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not uncommon
Yeah.
for people to come to me and they've spent hundreds and thousands on training
Right.
because they tried to answer that question. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know why is a pattern. So I'm gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna coach you through how to identify that pattern. Okay.
Okay. Because I
So
have a lot of reasons, you know what I mean? Like I do have a lot of different reasons, but I kind of came up with I don't know because there's so many different possibilities, like
right, and when you think about it, Victoria, I'm sure that you have done tons of different research into how to build your community, right? I'm
Yeah.
guessing that you
Yeah. And
internet searched it.
part of it, it just feels like it just takes a certain amount of time, like it just feels like, if you say today, I want 1 million subscribers, it's not going to happen overnight. So I think part of it, for me, is just like, I know that it takes time, but I also am open to the fact that, there's probably some patterning that could get me there faster.
Yeah. And we always just follow the subconscious. We let the subconscious be the guide, right? So if the subconscious said, I don't know how, perfect. We're just going to go with that. Okay. So we don't have to understand, like I was saying before, and it gets a little, this is an unusual way of doing life, right? Because most people are like, well, what's the solution? How do I fix this?
Yeah. You can tell I'm very left. I'm probably.
Oh no, everybody's looking for solutions, and it's honestly, it's not the most effective way to start. It's better off to look for the problem. So I don't know is the problem. We're going to go with that. I just don't know. Okay.
All right.
So, Victoria, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just think about, I don't know how to get 1 million subscribers.
I don't
tell
know.
Me how you feel. Not
overwhelmed.
What your mind is saying. Overwhelmed. Perfect. Okay. So a pattern is an intertwined physical sensation, emotion, thought. So the emotion inside this pattern is overwhelmed. Now, where do you feel that in the body? Where is the physical sensation arising?
Like high up in my chest, like, just between my chest and my throat.
Perfect. So there's like a constriction there or a tension there.
It's like a swelling.
Lovely. Okay. So there's a swelling between the chest and the throat. The emotion is overwhelmed. And the thought is, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. All right, great. What you just did was you just identified the pattern that is stopping you from knowing.
Okay.
Now, okay, this is not a real magic wand. Please don't misunderstand me. You need all 4 steps to remove that pattern. But if I could just magically wave that away, if that could somehow just magically disappear, who would you be at that point?
Who would I be? I would be someone who's 10 times more powerful.
Okay, powerful. Yeah. In action, right? Powerful. You would know what to do. That would just be, I know what
all knowing. Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so that's that was just a little taste, right? You start with, what is the goal? What am I trying to achieve? Your next question is, why do I not have that today? Forget about how you're going to get there. You're going to look at, what are my actions? What are my behaviors? What are my beliefs that are preventing me from having that? Under each of those actions, behaviors, beliefs, there runs a pattern in the brain that gives rise to that action, behavior, belief. Our job is to remove that pattern and let the brilliant brain do what it does, because Victoria, your solution is going to be different from the next person's solution.
Right.
The reason all of this training doesn't work is because the trainer who gives you their solution, which is absolutely correct, it is their solution for them, and it may or may not be yours.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I love that. That's very eye-opening, and I can see how that would be really powerful. And could it, because just to complete that, could a pattern be picking the wrong people to support your business? And even though, like, you think, oh, these people are going to be amazing, and then just always being let down by the people that you hire to do a job. whether it be marketing, whether it be the development side, like, because that's what I'm inclined to say why it's not working. I just didn't want to be too transparent about that, but you know what, it is what it is. And by the time this show airs, I probably, hopefully, will have broken through that pattern and pick better people. But is that a pattern that I have of just picking, the wrong people all the time?
Yep, absolutely. So, I'll tell you a story which brilliantly fits into this. I had one client, and she had a very, very similar pattern. She always thought she was really powerful woman, CFO, CEO of her own company. And it was a company that dealt with artificial intelligence. Okay. She was going to transform artificial intelligence and bring emotions into AI. She always thought to herself, oh my gosh, I can't do this alone. And so she kept reaching out for partners. And those partners, she kept bringing them into her business. And they would just take chunks of her business away and just not do anything and expect her to do all the work. So I invited her to look at it as pattern and not as reality. Right? So what was preventing her from just being her own CFO in this case? Okay. And what was preventing her was that pattern of, I can't do it alone. I need a man. I'm in a man's world. So we just removed that. And at that point, she stepped powerfully into the CEO role. It's not like she didn't hire after that, but she didn't hire people that she was positioning in her case as being in the know and she not in the know. Makes sense? So what was happening for her was, because she had a pattern that said, I don't know, she was vulnerable to people who came along and said, well, I know I can help you. Right? But they didn't know, because this was her business. She needed to own it as her business, right?
Right.
To do that, she had to say, I don't know, and that's okay. I am going to stand in I don't know and really get the right people on the bus who know, but I'm still in charge.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah, that makes a
So,
lot of sense.
okay, good. Okay, yeah, because people who have this pattern of consistently hiring the wrong person, it's because they don't feel like they can fully own what it is that they're trying to achieve. They keep thinking that the expert is outside of them, rather than they are the expert. They just don't know yet the answer. If I've just made sense, so I may have just confused you, right? But this is your business. You know, somewhere in your unconscious, you know exactly what you need, what you want, where you're going.
Yeah.
It's the job is to uncover that by removing the patterns that think that they don't know.
I love it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the final piece of this is, really to ask you, like how would you describe for somebody the difference between, working with these brain patterns and working with other types of personal development methods? How would you how would you explain how that would be, how that would show up differently for somebody working with you?
Yeah, I think the number one difference is I teach a method of subtraction. Most people teach a method of addition.
Oh, okay.
Neither is right or wrong. Okay, they're just two different ways of doing things. One is, let's determine where you want to go and how you're going to get there. The other is, let's remove everything that is preventing you from being there, and let's step powerfully into the unknown, and you will then know what to do. Okay,
That's
now
beautiful.
the tricky thing is our human brain is designed to avoid the unknown, right?
Why
So
is that? Why is it, a fear or?
No, it's the way the brain is wired. So
Okay.
once you have a pattern in your brain that takes an action, the brain thinks, I don't need to change this pattern. I've already got a pattern. And so its very design is to have you repeat actions over and over again. That's what it wants to do in order to make sure that you survive. Make sense?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So
Because
it's
it
doing that
thinks
to keep us alive.
it's doing that to keep you alive, and it needs to do that. The problem is that sometimes some of those patterns are actually the adverse of thriving, right? They're keeping
Yeah.
you stuck, but the brain doesn't care. Survival is all it's interested in. Okay. So I always say this: take my hand. We're going to leap into the unknown together. And I'm going to catch you on the way down. And don't worry, you'll be fine. And then people feel, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And then off we jump. And of course, the net's always there. The brain will always create a new pattern. It will not have a void in your brain. Just won't happen.
Wonderful. That sounds good. That sounds wonderful. So you are offering a free gift for our listeners today of the Power of Mind podcast. Can you please share what that is all about?
Absolutely. Anybody who's interested in repatterning, you can get a free copy of my award-winning book. Just go to shift4steps.com, and that's the number 4. And I'm sure Victoria will put that in the notes below. But all I ask is that you pay for shipping, and I would love to send you an autographed copy of my book. There's also a free training on that same site. So if you're interested in left brain, right brain, what's happening in the world, why things are going a little bit topsy-turvy right now, that is really, really helpful to understand what's going on and how to change it. So shift4steps.com, and yeah, lots there.
Awesome. Well, Adele, this has just been such an enlightening discovery process of learning about this brain patterning technique that you do. And I really hope our listeners will go to your website and, and get that book and the training and and even go on to the next level with you and the next steps of helping to repattern anything that's been stuck and keeping people from really achieving all that they desire and they deserve, because it's all possible. And so it's just been really great getting to know you, and thank you so much for being on the Power of Your Mind podcast today.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. It's been fun. Hopefully it's been enlightening for your listeners here.
Oh, I'm sure it definitely has. It has been enlightening for me. So I'm sure it's been wonderful for our listeners. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.